you can alleviate the pressure of yourself to think like, I have to have this all figured out before I give it a chance, because nobody has it all figured out before they take the first step.
You're listening to the Kristof Lewis Podcast, a podcast where I have conversations with inspirational people. My name is Chris, but my family calls me Kristof. My goal is to have as many conversations as possible with people who have forged their own path by pursuing their dreams, making them a reality, all the while emitting positivity and sharing this knowledge with others. I seek these people out and share this information with you, proving to the world that you can do what makes you happy and do what you want for a living while being a good human being. We'll talk about careers, but we'll also cover any story that inspires. Let's do this while helping each other. Thanks for listening. I'm happy you're here. Hey friends, what's going on? Welcome to the Kristof Lewis Podcast, Create Your Career. Thank you so much for being here. I'm excited. Every time I'm excited, I'm so pumped. This has been another powerful episode. This is conversation number 142, total episodes number 240. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time. These episodes, these conversations are the ones with a guest. There's another segment within the podcast, which is the contemplations. That's just me divulging some of the topics that I've covered with you, the listeners, throughout the week. I have conversations in Instagram and LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and when we learn things, I share them in the contemplations like that, life lessons, things like that. So 2 segments within the podcast. My guest today is Malorie Nicole, and she is a subconscious coach, an entrepreneur coach. She shared with us a really personal story at the end of the podcast about one of the obstacles that she had to overcome in her life. Pretty much boils down to a doctor saying she's never going to be able to do things anymore, and the way she overcame it is so powerful. All the things leading up to that were just a crescendo of awesomeness leading into this finale, and she just absolutely crushed it. Remember, you can find this podcast on kristoflewis.com/podcast or on any of your favorite podcast apps. You can head over to YouTube. The conversations with the guests are on YouTube. Head over there and subscribe. I'd greatly appreciate it. Sharing with a friend is an awesome way to help out. And you can find me on Instagram at Kristof Lewis. So without further ado, welcome to the Kristof Lewis Podcast, Create Your Career.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to you.
I'm always excited. It just means a lot for me for people to come on and want to talk and want to help other people. And obviously what you do is focused on helping other people massively. So I do want to get into that. And I'm very much anticipating some of the answers to some of the things that I had on my mind. So before we get into the rest of the episode, do you mind introducing yourself to some of the people that may not know who you are?
Yeah, so my name is Malorie, and I do subconscious mindset work with entrepreneurs, driven professionals, and executives. So basically what I do is help people really remove the mental blocks that are blocking them from really achieving success in their life, but also feeling the way that they want to feel. Success is not just a monetary thing, but really experiencing and living in a lifestyle that they want to live.
Sure. So that brings up a good question already, is I love how you describe success, but I'm interested in you describing success even more, because I'll go first really quick, is I think success is clearly different for everybody. And I love how you said it's not something, and you speak to so many people. So how would you define success?
That's such a great question. I think it really, this answer is not going to be what you're going to find in the dictionary. But what I think success really means is when somebody has the ability to say yes to the things that work for them in their life and no to the things that don't, and really align themselves in a business or career lifestyle that makes them happy. Because, you know, I get on the phone with so many people. I just had someone today. And a very simple question: what percentage of the work that you're doing in your business are you actually enjoying and is in your zone of genius? And the answer was like under 5%. Well, that's a huge indicator that this person's not living a successful lifestyle, because we know that even if the money's coming in, the experience isn't what she wants to be having.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And I've gotten that asked on like when I was a guest on other podcasts, and I answer it similarly. I feel like first what I prefaced it with is it's completely different for everybody. But one of the reasons I was so pumped about getting you on here, and why I'm so excited, like I said, for everybody to come on here, is because I want to encourage people in exactly the answer that you gave. And so, whoa, why do you have a podcast? Well, I want to have these people, and look, you are doing, and then all these other people you're helping them to be in the pursuit of what makes them happy. That was one of the key things that you said, and that was a huge contributor to their version of whatever that is for success. So I think that's awesome, but I want to step it back just a couple steps, and I want to know, how did you even come into doing what you're doing now? How long have you been doing it, and then how did you get into that? Because I want to encourage people to, hey, if you're that person that's not happy with what you're doing now, how do you do something to that? So were you not happy? And if you, or whatever, like, I want to hear about that.
Right. Yeah. What was the career change actually like?
Sure.
Yeah. So and I actually really like this question because I was recently doing a podcast on similar like career transitional work. And when you're in a career, sometimes it's so hard to really identify and see yourself in a business situation because you don't know what you don't know about what's possible and what you can do. And being able to see the big picture, it's really not possible. You can't see the full picture of the how when you are in a career. And that's okay. Knowing that, you can alleviate the pressure of yourself to think like, I have to have this all figured out before I give it a chance, because nobody has it all figured out before they take the first step. That's, part of this. I never actually expected myself to be where I am. My experience in this whole career shift wasn't planned. I got super sick, and that led me into a world of health and wellness, which I don't really do health and wellness work anymore. Okay. But that started an educational path in wanting to understand how the mind and the body and the brain were connected, which led to multiple certifications, and that led to starting a part-time business. That quickly led to starting a full-time business. But going back to that, like the how, knowing how, I didn't know. I just kept feeling the sense of, oh, I need to learn more about health and wellness. I'm going to get a certification. So I knew that first step. And then it was like, oh, I now have a certification and I have people that are asking for help, but I'm in a career. Maybe I should do it on the side. And so I took that step, and it was a series of that, and it will continue to be, that led me to where I am now.
That's so cool. So there's a lot of good things there, but I couldn't think of the saying, and maybe you know it, but it's something along the lines of when you're in the forest, or you can't see the forest when you're in it, or what is that? And I know somebody's like bashing their head against their cell phone right now, like, dude, it's this, but it's hard to see the entire forest when the trees are in front of you. But it kind of makes sense of like, I was just thinking about that when you're doing something, it's really hard to see. Like, for example, and this, for somebody like you and somebody like me, I talk to a lot of people. I try to give a lot of advice. It's so much easier for me to give that advice than it is to be like, well, what would I say to myself? And then actually follow through on that. So that totally makes sense that you said that. And it's interesting to where you said you weren't really in a good place. You said physically, your well-being, and I think a lot of people can relate to that. I can relate to that. But what I love from that is that you made something good out of that. So I'm all about create your career, the Kristof Lewis podcast, create your career, create stuff, create. And so what I'm hearing is that you've gone out there and you have this bad experience, or you've continued to have it, and you may still be living with it right now. But the point is regardless of all of that you've created something for yourself, and out of that, something else was born, and that you didn't have to know all the steps, because who the hell knows all the steps to figuring it out? Because again, like, what coincides with success? Well, what is figuring it out? What the hell does that mean? I don't know, but you took one step, and that's what's so important.
Right, yeah. Exactly. And there's so many layers to that. Like, as far as coaching is concerned, right now, in the perception of the coaching world, I'm supposed to write my book. I'm supposed to go on stage. I'm supposed to, quote unquote, do all of these things. Sure. And there's a lot of those things that right now I don't really want to do. There's some volunteer work that I want to do right now. I have some real estate stuff that I want to get into, because real estate is a huge passion of mine. So there's all of these other things that I want to work on. And that just goes to show, sometimes I think, oh, when I start the business, I'll be happy and it'll be fine and I'll get myself out of this career and then I'll have everything set. But you're still creating. I'm still creating my life day in and day out as it goes. Yes, I have a really great business and I'm super passionate about it, but there are other parts of me that want and need to be nurtured too. And that's something that I think just looking at it holistically is so important for all of us.
Yes, absolutely. The holistic approach is very important. That is something that's been difficult for me as well. And I think one of the things I keyed in on you was that you mentioned happiness, and you think that when you obtain something, when you get that goal, that new business or whatever it is, that you almost depend on that for happiness. And and this response right now is kind of formulated out of a lot of the books I've read recently, like The Power of Now, but and those types of things. And what I realized in of myself, and I kind of hear in your answer here, is that you were thinking about, when I get these things, it's going to make me happy. So how did you, I'm going to pull pages out of that book right now. I'm going to be like, how did you kind of combat that and live in the now, and as opposed to being hinged on the future for happiness?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I didn't, when it comes to like this transition, I was so blind to everything when I first started my business. I had no idea all of the upper limits that I was going to experience. And if you're not familiar with the term upper limits, it comes from the Big Leap. It's just really like me blocking myself though. Okay. I didn't realize how many areas of my life and my business that I was actually blocking myself on. So, if you want to see all of your stuff and if you want to grow personally, start a business, because you'll see it really quickly. And that's kind of what happened to me. I started a business and I was doing health and wellness stuff. And I just started to see a lot of my own personal patterns. And that led me, it goes in conjunction. All of the education that I was going through also related to a lot of personal coaching that I was getting, trauma work that I was working through, some of my old stuff. So it all kind of happened at the same time. But I will say that in the first year and a half of my business, there was a lot of fear and a lot of scarcity around, where are the clients going to come from? Is this going to work out? I saw success. Am I going to see it next month and the month after that? Is it all going to be what I want and need it to be? And I wasn't thinking about this lifestyle design as far as really creating something that works for me, and not seeing the path that a coach takes and then taking that path, if that makes sense.
Oh, it's really interesting. And again, I think a lot of these things, and I've talked to a lot of people, and the answer is always a little bit different for that of, again, we're trying to quantify or define what is success, what is all of these things, and it's different for everybody. So I think probably most people would define, how are you being more happy in the moment, as opposed to depending on future success and goals. Because I know for somebody like myself that's very goal oriented, it's hard to not be solely focused on those. So yeah, it does make sense. And like I tell every guest, and I honestly mean it, and I would say this to the listeners too, I'll break that wall of saying, like, however you answer a question or however you think it is probably the right answer, because that's what it is, tailored to you. So just because somebody answers something differently doesn't mean that it's right or wrong. And same thing with you. It's just what works for you. Like when you read a book, you don't have to agree with like for us, like when you listen to us, you don't have to agree with everything we say, just maybe a couple things, and you can formulate and kind of strategize what you want for you. I want to talk about the career a little bit more. I'm wondering, is there any kind of behaviors that stood out for you personally? I want to talk about the people you work with a little bit later, but for you personally, have there been any behaviors as a coach, as an individual, to just be a better human that have led to, again, quote unquote, the success that you've wanted to see? What are some of those behaviors that have really stood out to you over the years?
Consistency definitely is a huge, huge part of anyone's success in the way that you identify and define success. For me, though, I'm going to be honest, I really think that something that's really helped me is making decisions based on feeling. And I know that a lot, and that's where it goes into, some people are going to say that is a load and you should not do that, and that's not helpful, and that's not going to get you anywhere. But I wouldn't be doing this work had I not just had these feelings of, I really need to learn more about health and wellness. And then the feeling came up later of, I need to do a Facebook Live and see if anybody wants help in what I'm working on now. Yeah. And then I got a very visceral feeling of, okay, it's time to leave my job and start a business. And it feels scary, but I have a serious gut feeling that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. I think our intuition always knows. We don't always know how to listen to it, but that voice is always there.
That's true. That's such a great answer. And that's why I love asking a lot of these questions that come to mind, because I've seen so much, again, and I think in my own life, and I try to relate to myself, and I would encourage the listeners, as you're listening to these type of episodes, like, ask of yourself these types of things. You've heard people go, be objective, or be subjective, or be subjective. And once again, it coincides with our last point of, like, why not have a little bit of both? Try to listen to yourself, I think, is what I got from you. And I love that point. Listen to yourself and don't think it's wrong, again, whatever that means. Don't think it's wrong to be able to listen to yourself if that's how you feel about something, because clearly that is what has led you to where you are now. And if you hadn't have listened to those, like you said, you wouldn't be here and you wouldn't have helped so many other people. So now I want to dive into the latter part of the question, and I kind of want to tweak it a little bit. I don't want to go talk about the behaviors in your clients per se, but I want to talk about something that I ask every single guest. The question always sounds obvious at first. I'm going to ask, why do you choose to help people? Why are you so passionate about helping people? And to you and to the listeners, the reason, if you're the first time listening to this episode, this podcast, the reason I asked this question is because, number one, again, everybody answers it differently. They have maybe a reason from their childhood or something, or epiphany, but also because asking the question promotes the answer. So my question to you is, Malorie, why do you choose to help people?
Yeah, I choose to help people because I believe that there's a lack of education about why people experience things the way that they do. So a lot of people are stuck in stress and overwhelm, and a lot of people are stuck in these situations in their life that they don't really want to be in, and they're not happy and they're not fulfilled, and they don't think feel like they're really living out their purpose and their potential. And they think that's just circumstances that are creating that. But so much of this has to do with the way your brain is processing information, the way you're processing your feelings and your emotions, what has been conditioned in your mind, and all of these things play a part. But a lot of it comes from the way your subconscious mind is programmed. Okay. And we don't talk about that a whole lot. Yeah. And in just addressing that part of your world and that part of your history and that part of your map, you have so much potential underneath all of that conditioned thinking and belief that's been created. That's where a lot of shift happens. And I love being able to see people who are so stuck and so just feeling like they don't know how to change that, do the work that might not seem like it's related. It might seem completely disconnected, but in a matter of weeks, it's like, oh my gosh, now I get it. Now I see what was really going on. Now I have clarity.
Yeah, it's so cool to be able to highlight that for other people and be able to contribute to what those people are trying to obtain. And I know that's one of the main reasons I do this. And I do appreciate you answering that question. I think it's a very special question because it means so much to the people that are on here. Because one of my stipulations for having guests on here is I could find the most awesome dude or girl or whoever, woman, or man, but if they don't help somebody, if I don't see them consciously trying to help other people with whatever they're doing, then they're not going to be on the show. So that's why that question is so special to me. So I want to dig further even more into the way you answer that question, and I want to dig more into what you're specifically doing with how you're helping people. And that is what you said a few times now, the subconscious. And you kind of answered it a little bit, but I was going to say, why do you focus on that? But so since you kind of answered that, I kind of want to go into how do you focus? Like if I was a client or if we were speaking to somebody else, what do you typically focus on if we can get into that?
Yeah, so I help people really understand what belief patterns they are operating from right now. So all of us, you, me, anybody that's listening to this, we are perceiving things in a certain light because of the way our mind has been shaped throughout, our childhood, our livelihood. And not all of it is in childhood. I just want to make sure that's clear there. Not everything that you're thinking right now is just because of how you grew up as a kid. You continue to create beliefs as life goes on. A lot of people get stuck in these situations where they feel like their current present day problems, they can't fix them. They can't outwork them. And they get stuck in these patterns really that they are trying to outwork them, and nothing is changing because the problem that's really the problem actually isn't being addressed. And that's somewhere in their lens of thinking. So I help people do the deep work that's actually creating the present day stress and stuck feeling. Interesting.
It really reminds me of, I think it's, I'm trying to think of the book. I think it's Addicted to the Monkey Mind. And it reminds me of the monkey mind, essentially those brain waves that are just, they're highways of brain waves, and that's what they are. And it seems as if they're never going to change, but you can change them. And by speaking with people like you, again, like we were talking about earlier in the podcast episode about how it's hard to tell yourself some things. It's hard to see the big picture. But when somebody like you comes into the picture and is an expert in the field and is able to come in and talk to you about that and help identify it within yourself, then you're able to better grow because of that. So it's really awesome to be able to see you be able to key down into that and understand that. And then even when you said you added on and you said it's not only what's rooted in your childhood, you're continuing, right? Because for me, I would tell anybody, you know, I want to continue to grow to the day that I die, and I want to continue to learn. You know, you said when you're having issues, you wanted to learn, and that's what sparked you to what you're doing now. So it's kind of cool for me asking you these questions to see all of these things up until this point already linked together. Your own story, why you're helping other people, how you're helping other people, and then dive deep into the how even more. So to me, that's really neat that you're able to do that, and I love that you're able to do that. I think that's really important. It's one of the hardest things that I've tried to do, is try to reroute those own pathways that I have. And I think, and I'd love to hear your opinion on this, speaking of feelings and opinions, but I think people think that it cannot be rerouted, that, hey, that's who I am. I don't think I'm going to be able to change. I'm just the way I am, and blah, 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 blah. So what would you say to somebody that asked you that question or made that statement to you?
Yeah, totally. Is this explicit?
Oh yeah. I've got the.
I would say that that's a load of shit, because we all have the ability to change, and it gets into epigenetics. There's so much that has to do with our genetics in that too. You know, you hear people all the time like, oh, well, I'm probably gonna have a heart attack because heart attacks are part of my family history, and it's like, well, is it really that, or is it the conditioned way that you're handling and your body is handling stress? So we have all of these boxes, like, I am the way that I am because my mother or father was that way and I carried that on, and that's just the way that I am too. And none of this is about reliving our past. I want to make sure I make that super clear, because a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to go to therapy. I don't want to go back and do all that. That's not what this is. We just really need to know what your lens is right now, where it came from, where it's rooted, what stories are being created, so that you can create new ones if those ones aren't working for you. Because there is no such thing as someone that can't change. There is no such thing as I'm always going to be this way. That's just false and not true. Yeah. And that's one thing that I will say, like, on this podcast, fight me on anything that you know, like, we all need to come to our own terms, but I fully believe that as truth, and that can't be altered.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, gosh, I'd really want to talk to somebody. And if you're listening and you are that person that we're talking about right now, like, reach out to us. Like, Malorie's information will be in the show notes, obviously, at the end, and we'll get to that at the end of this episode. But reach out to us. And if you really don't think that you can change, or you have tried to change and you just can't seem to do it by yourself, I think one of the most important things that I've discovered in my own journey, of which is my life and this podcast and meeting people such as yourself, is ask for help. Like, it's been difficult for me to check my ego and ask for help. And I think the topics that you focus on and that we're discussing right now are important, and that is something you can also ask for help with. And I think because we're digging really deeply into our mind, like you said, the subconscious, and then we have our ego as well, it can be difficult to do that. So I would encourage that, because there is obviously people like yourself out there that are more than willing to have the conversation, and that's very special. So speaking of conversations, your podcast, the Abundantly Care podcast, you have the podcast, and that's your coaching as well. Is that correct?
They're in line with each other, but the podcast is a little bit different than the work that I do with clients. So on the podcast, I have like a lot of just random entrepreneurial stories, a lot of people, you know, sharing their experiences of what it's been like to achieve success and blow up. I say that in quotes, like blow up their success and start over. And I end up working with a lot of people in the transitional phase. So it's really helpful for the clients that I work with and the listeners to understand and hear, you know, just because you created something that's worked doesn't mean that it has to stay that way. Because we're not trees. Actually, we were just talking about we can change, we can shift, we can grow, we can move. Yeah. And business is the same way. A lot of people get stuck into these constructs and they pay for masterminds and all this stuff. And all that stuff can be so beneficial. But when you are experiencing your own limitations, sometimes it can enhance that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It makes me think of what got you here won't get you there. It's
right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
right. You know, so that's cool. And you just had your 100th episode recently. Is that correct?
I did.
Yes,
Yeah, I
congrats.
did.
That's a massive congrats. That's awesome. That's huge.
Thank you.
That's so much
Thank
work.
you so much.
Yeah, as a fellow podcaster,
Yeah.
like that's really big. I know how much work it takes to be able to do something like this. So that's really cool that you're that committed to do it. You know, you're not only doing the coaching, but you're doing the podcast as well, and that's really special. So you mentioned entrepreneurship. So do you niche down even more within your subconscious niche to just a lot of entrepreneurs? Is that what you focus on mostly, it sounds like, or is there something else?
No, that's most of what the podcast is, because
okay.
that's most of the listeners are entrepreneurs. But I work with people all over. Yeah, I work with people all over. Work with a lot of people in leadership roles, executive type of roles, because really all of this plays into every area. Mm-hmm. But as you know, when you're doing something like a podcast, you need to kind of hone in on the message that you want to share. Yeah. So an entrepreneurship is a world that I've found myself in the online space, and that's changing a little bit. But
sure.
It's all people.
Well, we're going to embrace the hell out of that change because like you said it earlier, everything changes, and honestly, technology is moving at the speed of light, probably quicker now. There's probably something out there quicker. So I'm just kidding. But seriously, it's really crazy, and all of that's really awesome. And I do firmly believe in that. And yeah, like my thing is careers. I want to encourage you to do what you want. And these are people that have done it, my guests. So I love all of this has been awesome. And I like shifting to what I'm about to shift sometimes is this is all great, but let's talk about something that potentially derailed everything. Did you have an obstacle in your life that you maybe thought that you couldn't do what you're doing right now, whether it is what you do right now or something else?
Yeah, but it didn't happen during the things that we're talking about. It actually happened a couple years before that.
Interesting. So do you mind sharing more about that with us? And was that kind of like more of a shift in behavior? We can talk about it at a high level and whatever you're comfortable with, really.
Yeah. So it was just a really traumatic experience. Let's see, what year is it? 9 years ago, I was, so not to put context to this, I'm 30, so I was 21 years old. And 9 years ago, I was just living a life that was pretty out of alignment. I wasn't doing a whole lot other than, 21 years old, going to college, partying, getting my credits done, whatever. It was what it was. And I got in a bad bicycle accident that was nobody's fault but my own. And I experienced a traumatic brain injury.
Wow. I
lost a huge portion of my memory in that time. It took a really long time to heal. I had a doctor tell me about a month and a half after the injury that I shouldn't go back to school anytime soon, because if I did, I was going to fail out and not finish college. And that really derailed me. I still remember those conversations. I don't remember a whole lot of the incident and the before and after. It's pretty foggy. But the part of my brain that got messed up in that time is directly related to short-term memory. Mm-hmm. So that year of my life was very challenging. Yeah. And I went through a lot of deep and dark emotions during that period of time because I just was not sure. I wasn't sure what my future looked like.
Super scary. Super scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it all turned out okay.
And that's what I'm saying. And it's, I can't thank you enough for sharing that with us. It's not an easy question because Lord knows what I'm going to hear when I ask that question, because everybody, again, has I've heard the craziest things, and that's horrible. And I know that year was horrible. And the thing is like, you have no idea really how it's going to turn out when you're going through it. All you can do is the best you can damn do every single day when you're living through it. And that's what I try to tell myself. Again, it's not easy when you're living it. And 9 years ago, you can look back and you can tell the story now, and it still has an impact on you when you tell the story. But you are where you are now. And you got out of that year. But that year, I just met you. I wasn't with you then. I'm not you, but I guarantee you, just by hearing you telling the story, seeing your face, that was a very difficult time. And you have no idea really where that's going to go. And especially okay, so now you're listening to somebody, a doctor, you know, who should know what the heck is going on. And so when somebody in that magnitude, that level, that skill tells you that, wow, you should probably just now go back to school. Like, you should not do these things. And that's terrifying when you have, when you're being told that you have limitations. So whether it be mental, or I've talked to a lot of people that have lost limbs on here, have not told they could do this, not told they could do that, whatever it is, physical, mental limitations. When somebody tells you you can't do something, a lot of times, as crappy as it is in the time, what you just told me and the other guests that I've talked to that have physical things, they're doing it. You're doing this. You're crushing it. You're helping other people. And I think that speaks so much more for you, that you're helping people now all these years later. And I mean, obviously you've been doing it for some time too, but these other people that I've talked to as well. So I'm endlessly inspired by you and by other people that are on this podcast because of things like that, and you've overcome. And I would go on to say, if I may, that part of the reason that you help other people is because some of the experiences you've probably had in yourself. And I guarantee you, if we had another half an hour here, I'm sure there was a ton of people that helped you as well in your journey to recovery in that and contribute to what you're doing now.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not a believer in playing, you know, the negative devil's advocate and everything and questioning every single thing that comes out, but it kind of ties in, because everything that you're just saying and all the stuff we've talked about, I really did have a doctor basically look at me and say, there's a really high chance that you're not going to be the same, and that your life's pretty much, you know, for what you know it is done. And I remember thinking, it's funny because I don't remember a whole lot during that period, but I remember looking at him in the eyes and just thinking, like, you're wrong. And, you know, the recovery was long, but he was wrong.
Yeah.
So that just goes to show we do need to question our own limitations. We need to question the things that we say to ourselves. Just because we say it doesn't mean it's true. Just because somebody else says it doesn't mean it's true. And give ourselves an opportunity to really identify what is true for us and what isn't.
I absolutely love that. That's a phenomenal note to end on for this podcast. It's been yet again another very powerful, dare I say, emotional podcast. I mean, this is life, and that's why I love giving these. I say these are real life examples of real human beings that have had these real life experiences that, amongst the odds, you know, defying the odds of people telling them in their face that they can't do something. And as scary as it is, we are here now because we endured through those things. So if you're listening to this, you're obviously here now. So you've made it to now. Let's just keep on pushing it. You've been crushing it. You've been helping other people. I'm trying to do that. People listening to this podcast, I know, help me because they reach out to me, and I got my own shit going on. So thank you. So I appreciate your time so much. This has been really fun. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. But I would love, before we get out of here, for people to be able to know where to find you, whether it be websites, Instagram, Facebook, anything like that.
Easiest, I'm spending less and less time on social media these days. So easiest way to find me is abundantlyclearpodcast.com, or you can go listen to the podcast. That's definitely, there's 2 a week. I show up there weekly, but that's the best place. Social media stuff I've been trying to slow down on a little bit just for myself right now.
Yeah, no worries. You got to do what's right for you and what you're feeling, you know? That like, speaking of feelings, you got to do that. So you all will be able to find all of that in the show notes, the podcast, the websites, everything and more than you ever dreamed of. You'll be able to find it there. Maybe not everything, but everything we talked about today. So
big promises.
Yeah, big promises. I hope I deliver. Malorie, thank you so much again. This has been absolutely wonderful from start to finish. We covered a lot of topics. We went wide. We went deep. It was awesome. So thanks so much for your time, and have a great rest of your night.
Thank you for having me.